Okay, it's preparing. And some people do join for with YouTube, so that's fine. Okay, we're live. So just because we are going to be starting right on time, um, hello everyone and welcome to join us for today's webinar. This month, the topic is landing the role, navigating the shift from academia to industry. So for those of you that have advanced degrees, your deep expertise offers immense potential in tech, engineer, and even more on research nowadays with these advances in AI. So we know that making this transition can be very overwhelming, and each path represents a unique set of challenges in the applications and interview process. This is why we are very happy to join Andres, who is a technical staff engineer for Rivian and Volkswagen, and Patrick McNeil, who is now at Team Rora, helping AI researchers and PhD students um, to transition confidently from academia to industry. So they have a lot of knowledge and they have a lot of expertise. So we are very happy to have you both here. So to get started, I would like to give you the opportunity to Andres and Patrick to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about yourself, your careers, and what brought you to your current role at both of your organizations.
After you, Andreas.
Okay, sure. So, hi everyone. Hi Anna. Thank you again for inviting me to this conversation today. So, I'm currently at Rivian and Volkswagen Group Technologies. I think is the official name. But to go a bit back into how I got here, so I did my bachelor's studies in electrical engineering in Colombia, where I am originally from, and then I came to the US for my master's degree in Florida. This is almost 20 years ago, and I actually started my PhD at the time, and I just didn't finish it because I got a job, but that's probably a topic for a different conversation. And after that, I had multiple engineering roles at the beginning, working a bit in the intersection of hardware and software FPGA development, then mostly focused on software like for 7 or 8 more years. Then when I came to Rivian, basically initially is when I started my TPM role, which stands for Technical Program Manager. And yeah, that's a bit of a bigger scope role in terms of the visibility and getting to the organization, working like with more teams, not only internally within our org, but also with cross-functional teams like across Rivian and now Volkswagen. So yeah, that's where I am now and looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Patrick McNeil. First thing I want to say is that I'm super excited to be here and talk to you all, everyone, or at least share any knowledge that I can. But I want to take a second, and I hope everyone has taken a second. Those of you who are PhDs or getting ready to graduate, or if you're almost to your PhD, and just celebrate yourself for such an amazing accomplishment that you all are on the verge of or have completed. That's amazing. And I just want to make sure I recognize that hard work that everyone put in, and I hope you recognize that in yourself. As far as myself, I'm currently an agent partner for a company called Rora, where I currently help elite technical talent navigate the job search process. We help them from everywhere from building their networking pipelines to preparing for interviews to negotiating their comp packages, which is our specialty. So I graduated with strangely enough, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas a long time ago. I worked as a probation officer actually for several years. After that, I began working in nonprofit areas where I specialized in helping people from underprivileged communities get jobs in general. And then from that point, that elevated to me getting another position with a company called Crop, where I specifically focused on helping people from underprivileged communities get jobs in the tech industry. Of course, that was a natural segue to where I landed now as an agent partner with Rora, where I currently help, as I said, elite technical talent get jobs in tech, prepare for these jobs, prepare for the roles. And so, I really love what I do because, as you've seen, from my transition from probation officer to working in nonprofit, is I've been helping people. And what I do now, I still consider that helping people because big tech, they spend millions of dollars on their human resources to take advantage of new people coming out of school. And I love helping people navigate through a system that you're unfamiliar with. So I get excited about that, and I love people doing that. And on another note, I am also currently working on an MBA at Cal State LA. So that's my story in a nutshell and how I ended up doing what I'm doing today.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That was actually my follow-up question, and is if you were working in something exciting in a new project. So for you, I think it's your MBA, Patrick. But I don't know if there's another project that you would like to share with us and Andres, of course.
Um, well, as far as another project, I can say my company, don't know if I'm supposed to talk about it, but we're actually switching. We're working on kind of shifting our focus, and maybe I can explain it this way. You guys all know how our favorite athletes or our favorite actors have agents. We are switching from and working on a transition from more than just representing people in the job search, but actually becoming agents for elite technical talent. So representing people throughout their careers. And it's an amazing project. And it's more about building long-term relationships with people like the people who are watching this webinar. So we are working on that. And it's super exciting to see where that goes.
Amazing. That sounds really interesting.
Sure. Yeah. And I guess from my side, so in the last year or so, a big change for our organization has been we went from being part of Rivian, which is an electrical vehicle company. I'm part of the camera and AI group there. And we now became a separate organization that both Rivian and Volkswagen put together that is going to basically develop the hardware architecture and software and like use cases for both companies now. So not only Rivian vehicles, but also Volkswagen, and Volkswagen has many brands under them. So that's a big challenge to say the least. So a lot of conversations going on. How do we become more efficient? How do we make our solutions more scalable? Because now we cannot just be, let's say, focusing in one like a vehicle at a time, because there will be like so many. So that's an exciting thing going on. Of course, using AI tools and all this is a very good fit for the teams right now. Yep.
Yeah, amazing. Congratulations. Working on Volkswagen should be a great challenge. Okay, so now thank you for breaking the ice to you too. Now I think we can get started on the topic of the webinar, which is basically how to make this transition from academia to industry. So I want to start from the very beginning, because you could start submitting applications, but identifying the best opportunities and the right opportunities according to your profile sometimes is a very competitive environment. So I want to talk talk a little bit about this, and how do we do like this smart job searching and the power of having a network, and of course building your profile that could stand out of many profiles that are raising every day. So yeah, I want to talk a little bit about this. So when you're looking to these high level roles, or these technical roles as well, how should be, in your opinion, the candidate job strategy to hunt these job opportunities, and if there's a difference between applied AI and engineering roles, and how should be how should an applicant differentiate these opportunities and prioritize those who will be more successful? Maybe Patrick or Andres, if you'd like to break the ice again.
Andres, if you don't want
Patrick,
to go, yeah, go ahead, Andres.
you can go first. Okay, sure. So I think on the question itself, there are many points there that we could touch on. So let's say, first of all, the transition. So of course, going from school to, like, let's say, industry is a huge change, right? One advice I will give for those of you who are close to graduation or still in college or the university is basically, I think networking, which everybody talks as a critical piece for like what your next step is going to be or how to grow your career, of course. The good thing about being in school is that I feel this happens like organically, and it's easy, it's right there. We're not even thinking about it, and it is happening. Like people I met in school, I'm still in close connection to them. That has led one way or another to roles. People I have seen it happen to them as well. My point is basically, let's say once you transition to industry, you have to be a bit more intentional on the networking, right? Because now it's not such, not very like a given when you're doing your day-to-day job. You have to do a lot of things, let's say, for the networking to happen and build relationships. So I would say, again, going back to students, take advantage of that, connect with people in your school, taking it a bit more forward. If I'm looking at roles, maybe I can use, of course, this amazing platform called LinkedIn, right? So I can go there and check, okay, what is a person that wants, let's say, that role I want or that I have the skills for? How did that person get there? What kind of education did they get? Of course, PhD is one, but are they doing anything after this whole Gen AI thing came to us? Are they taking any extra courses because of this? What organizations they are working on? A helpful tool as well is to go read job descriptions. And of course, we can now automate a lot of this, right? So you can go search, okay, this is the job I want, developing transformers networks, right? And you can go search, okay, what in specific that companies looking for, the job roles, job descriptions are very detailed nowadays, right? And these are the things you can do. And of course, leveraging networking is very important. And one thing I usually say is networking, in my opinion, I was part of nonprofits for a long time. I led nonprofits for a long time. It should be a two-way street. So one is, how do I get the support I need? And another one should be, how do I support others, right? Because if we as a, let's say, as a community, we don't have the thought process of wanting to help other people, then it's going to be very difficult, regardless of your level, to, let's say, get to the next level. In this case, for example, the next job, right? So look, networking, again, try to leverage that as much as I can. I'm sure Patrick, who is doing this on a more day-to-day basis, can comment more. But to also address another question on applied engineering versus a pure research role, from my experience, this really goes back to what the organizational strategies are. So in a pure research organization, you're probably thinking longer term, what is going to be, or how can we drive the development of state of the art? How can we make transformational changes? When you are in an engineering organization, which is the case for me, even though we have some research groups embedded there, the focus is more at the product level. What services are we producing? What do the consumers need? So it's a bit more oriented towards a practical application into a product or a service. Whereas on the, I would say, the pure AI research domain is more like long-term thinking. What is going to be the next breakthrough after, let's say, Gen AI? We always know something is coming next, right? So what's that next thing? And some companies do have the ability to invest in that. And at the end of the day, what I have seen happening is this translates into, of course, your day-to-day job, but also how much freedom you are going to have. So for example, the research teams within our organizations, they do have freedom, but they also have constraints into, okay, we have to deliver something, let's say, in the next 1 or 2 years. So we have to be able to, let's say, develop the AI model, retrain it, or use an existing model, retrain it, fine tune it, go run it in the vehicle, go test it in probably dozens or hundreds of vehicles, get feedback. Whereas if you're in a pure research role, you might be like, you might get longer periods of times to probably work on a specific thing. So again, a bit of the freedom like you get about what you are doing on a day-to-day or quarter-to-quarter or year-to-year basis.
Okay.
What do you think on that?
Nope, go ahead.
No, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about Andrea's position, and if you agree, given your position advising senior researchers?
Awesome. Yes, definitely agree with Andres so much. I'm going to go through that and then I'll elaborate a little more. But I will say Andres was spot on. Referrals, referrals, referrals when you're looking for jobs. Andres touched on it. So 40% of new tech positions are filled by referrals. So you can imagine if you don't have a referral, you already lessened your chances by 40% from the beginning. And we're not even talking about the other things that go in the applicant tracking system and all those other things that we could also talk about. But number one, whatever type of role you are going for, you should try to get referrals into that position because strictly applying online is uh, not efficient at all based on what we train people to do. So there's that. Now, going deeper into your question, when we start talking about AI candidates deciding whether to go to a research lab or an applied engineering track, we like to say there's different objectives and there's different signals and fit, right? So, like if you're looking for a research role, your primary focus is, novelty. What are they working on? Publication potential, advancing state of the art, and scientific autonomy. As Andres said, yes, you might have more autonomy, but you'll have a deadline where you need to produce something within a certain amount of time. Also in research, you may be looking at that. You may be looking at you're doing something that is in a purely research role where your work never makes it into an end product. So those are things to think about it as well. So some key signals to highlight in your own background is, your track record of high quality publications, your ability to propose new ideas, independence, conference leaderships, external collaborations, and your ability to track funding or grants. These are things that you should highlight about yourself if you're looking at a research role. So, as far as fit, you might be looking at labs like DeepMind, Medifare, things like that. It's going to be a strong emphasis. What they're looking for is a strong emphasis on your research, your domain depth, and your ability to have novel ideas and go in novel directions. Now, conversely, people looking for AI engineering roles, well, what are we looking at? We're looking at primarily developing impactful models and systems, things that can go into products, performance at scale, and working cross-functionally. You want to highlight your experience building things, deployment, your deployment track record, how you've optimized, and working on real product constraints. And of course, you need a strong ML engineering skill set. So when you're looking for roles like that, you might want to focus on groups inside product teams, research and development. You want to focus on teams where their work translates into metrics or actually deployed items. So those are kind of like the difference in those two roles that you may be looking for. So where do you search and how do you cast your net differently? I mean, if you're looking for research positions, you should start looking at affiliated institutions, looking at labs with embedded companies, like I mentioned before, like Medifare, DeepMind, Microsoft Research, and Pure Industrial Labs. You definitely are going to be focused more on those which are more research centric. As far as looking for positions, you want to monitor academic research job boards, conference postings, visiting researcher programs, and internally posted science and research tracks like at your university. And here's a big one that a lot of people ignore. Back to the networking again. You want to use any conferences you've been to or conferences that you are going to go to network. You should be trying to publish, present, chair sessions, and reach out to other people who are lab leads who have focuses similar to yours. Okay, another thing you want to do is you want to use your publication and citation network, and you want to use that to try to get warm introductions to people that you may know. And of course, be open to more hybrid roles because if you don't know, or if you do, a lot of jobs, they're kind of hybrid. They may say they're research, but they've got a lot of engineering involved, or vice versa. So that's on the research side. So I know I'm speaking a long time, but there's so much information I want to share with you guys. I actually gave myself some talking points that I wanted to hit. Um, so for applied
Actually,
engineering, What's that?
Actually, no, it's really funny because I did had some prepared questions, but you both like touched the other upcoming questions. So it's basically the networking and what to focus on when applying to research job, and basically to do the job prior to applying. That is basically do the research and learn and be aware of what they are looking for. So yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to highlight that.
Right, absolutely. And yeah, sorry if I went ahead on your questions here. So for the engineering roles, I'll go through quickly. You want to target AML, ML platform groups, applied scientist teams within companies. Use tech engineering job boards rather than strictly research job boards. Prioritize roles that are focusing on deploying model scaling, optimization, metrics, latency constraints, etc. So, and also use your engineering experience and open source contributions to talk about how these resulted in real world projects and or can translate into real world projects. So, like I said, in practice, sometimes research or applied scientist roles they overlap most of the time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree on everything that you both say, and particularly to what Andres said about looking prior to the job description, see if it aligned with what you're looking for, and then custom made your CV. Try to highlight those points that you said, Patrick, about if you're looking for a more development job, then to highlight the impact that you have had in the past, stuff like that, that tailor made your CV for that position that you're looking for.
Absolutely.
Which, on the contrary, many people just send out the same CV to everyone, but that usually doesn't work. So yeah, thank you both for those insights, and definitely the networking space is huge. It's huge for us, and this is a small world, so everyone meet each other, and it's really important. So is there anything else that you would like to add regarding this first step or the step 0 before applying to a position?
Well, I'd like to say, since I kind of went off on another question, is preparation is key overall, and that's probably going to be a theme throughout a lot of my answers. Like we talked about, your resume needs to be customized, but not just your resume, your LinkedIn, your personal website, if you have it. These all need to reflect a switch from an academic focus onto an industry focus. So I want everybody to know looking for a job is a job. And it's not just, hey, I'm going to start applying. You mentioned about customizing your resume. Without a doubt, you need to do that. You need to prepare for your technical interviews. We recommend a minimum of 200 hours preparing for your technical interviews, also your behavioral interviews. So all of this is before you apply, because a lot of larger companies, they can take up to 4 to 6 months for you to go to the pipeline. But if you're applying at startups, you can go from application to job offer in as little as 3 to 6 weeks. And so if you barely start preparing for the interview portion, or barely start trying to customize your resume or customize your websites at that last second, you may be too late before when a recruiter or a hiring manager actually goes to take a look at the things you've submitted or look at your website. So uh, prepare early before you start applying. So just to focus on what you talked about preparing for the job before you apply.
And maybe I'll just add a quick note on that step 0, Anna. So Patrick touched on referrals, which of course are very important. And so one thing I remember I once read, and I have no idea where I read it, maybe Patrick knows the data, but it was something along the lines of usually the second or third networking connections are the ones that can lead, for example, to that, let's say, next role. Because what I have seen in general is not that easy, let's say, like for that person that like to be like, okay, the hiring manager looking for a technical skill that I have, for the experience that I have. So what I mean here is it not only involves, let's say, having those connections, but also trying to leverage those for potential introductions, right? So maybe somebody, the person that you need to talk to is not the guy you went to school with, but maybe this person knows somebody else as a close friend, let's say, or a coworker that is looking or has that role job opening that requires what you know how to do, right? So again, trying to leverage this second and third, I don't know what's the official name, Patrick, this second and third connections in your networking, like circle. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Just to follow up on that, what we like to say is there's good referrals and there's lesser quality referrals. But all referrals are good, right? But the best referral is someone that really knows you and may campaign for you with the hiring manager. So those are the best, and we all want those. Sometimes that's not possible. That's when we go into what we call these secondary and tertiary referrals. And these are great as well, much better than no referral. So when you look at the difference between a referral from someone who doesn't know you well and not having a referral, there's no competition. The referral always wins. So what we recommend is if they're a person you don't know that you just connected on LinkedIn, or they're like a third level connection, a friend of a friend, always approach these connections by asking them, hey, I'd like to have a meeting to talk about what you're doing, to talk about what it's like to work at X company, because you are much more likely to get a response and subsequently a referral if you frame the question by, I want to talk about what you're doing. And you want to know why? People love talking about themselves and what they're doing. So before you ask for a referral from someone you don't know, make yourself interested in what they're doing. The conversation will naturally flow from that into what you're doing. And then that's when you're going to talk about towards the end of that conversation about getting a referral. So that's the way you approach getting referrals from people who are either distant connections or from someone you don't know that well on LinkedIn that is a connection, but you don't really know them.
Yeah, also a quick note on that is that if you are like aiming to approach to a research lab, try to search for their papers and discuss prior about the papers or about the work, and maybe if you have a comment or a suggestion to do for that particular research work, then they will appreciate that you follow their work and that you took the time to learn and to think about that next step. So definitely, again, as you said, preparation is key, and that also means to do the research and know where you're trying to apply to. So thank you both for this step zero tutorial or advices. Now I think we can move on to the next step, that is after doing this initial job research. And the next steps are critical also, because it's to recognize and articulate the value that you can bring to the table in those teams. So yeah, I just wanted to ask you both, for these transition states, how can PhD or master's students or undergrad even people, how can they frame their research experience or the experience that they have that is purely academic, sometimes like publications or teaching, for example, to resonate with what a hiring manager is usually looking for, or the recruiters are usually looking for, which might or may not have the context on the academic record that they have. And of course, how is this key point that could differentiate them from other candidates?
Okay.
Patrick, you start on this one? Yep.
Yeah, sure. Sure. And I think this question is closely related to how we talk about how candidates stand out, but it goes, a little deeper. So one of the challenges we see is that the industry doesn't always speak, as I like to call, they don't always speak PhD, right? A recruiting or a hiring manager may not immediately understand the value of your dissertation, a conference paper, or like you're a TA-ship, as we'll call it, unless you frame it in terms that recognize the impact, ownership, and relevance to business systems. And I'm going to repeat that again. When you're transitioning from academia into industry, it's switching from just talking about what you did. It's about demonstrating impact, showing ownership, and relevance to business decisions. So I want you to keep that in mind as a common theme in your transition. So number one tip that I would say is you need to treat your PhD as a job, not just a degree. Too often new grads look at their PhD as just a credential, right? But once you enter into industry, it's about, hey, what is your impact? What have you done? How have you led? So I want you to start talking about your PhD as a multi-year experience where you delivered complex and end-to-end work. So talk about your PhD as it's a job. So instead of saying simply, I got a PhD in computer science focused on generative modeling, you might say something like, hey, I led a 3-year research project on generative modeling, resulting in 3 peer-reviewed papers and a reproducible pipeline used by, by a team of 6 different researchers. Imagine that difference in that from just a blah, oh, I got a PhD in computer modeling. You're repositioning your PhD as a professional track record rather than just a degree. So that's the first tip is you want to treat your PhD as a job. And the same thing with your publications. You want to talk about your publications, you want to talk about what you actually contributed. In industry, they want to know what kind of initiative did you show? Did you propose the idea? Execution. Did you lead the work? What part did you play? And outcomes. What kind of outcomes? Did it solve a meaningful problem or did it influence others? Even if it's just a research paper, can you talk about how it could be applied to an industry problem or how it could find its way into a real world product? So these are the type of things you want to do. You want to tell a story about your innovation, real world traction in language that resonates with both, in your interviews and your resumes. Now, in your interviews, you want to focus on transferable thinking, similar to your PhD and your publications. You want to break down your reasoning processes in plain, structured language, showing how you think and how you solve problems. Show how you can apply your problems and how you can apply your ideas, to real world problems. And you want to demonstrate your ability to collaborate and simplify. These are things, this is the language of business. These are the things they want to see rather than I just published a paper. You want to talk about tangible results. So, and finally, on teaching and or TA-ships, as we call it, don't undersell that. Again, use everything as an opportunity to transfer it into an industry ability or something that resonates. So rather than just, I was a TA and blah, blah, blah lab, well, you could talk about, I mentored junior researchers on model reproducibility, right? I ran weekly lab meetings to align a team on goals and blockers. What does this show? This shows some leadership. This shows that you have the ability to coordinate. Hey, I develop onboarding materials for new grad students, which is now used by the whole lab. This turns teaching into team enablement, which, I'm saying that this is what you have to do. You have to start thinking about your experiences in school and make those into transferable skills because you don't have the work record. Make your school and the things you have done the work record.
Okay, maybe if I may, I'm gonna copy paste a sentence from Patrick, which was treat your PhD as a job. I think that's very valid for multiple reasons. And in fact, when for example, the organizations have a recent grad with a PhD degree, they're usually not gonna come as a recent grad, right? They probably get 2 levels. So basically the equivalent of 2 promotions, at least, if you were to compare it with an undergrad person like coming in, just graduating, right? So now in terms of framing your work, so once you join, let's say if you're going to join at that level, just again, because you're not going to get the recent grad treatment, let's say, you also need to show, and I think Patrick touched on some of this, you need to show the ability to really own a project or a solution, being able to drive it like end to end, as we say in industry. This means like requirements definition into, okay, putting it in the customer's hands and then being able even to make improvements, updates, whatever that is, scalability. So yeah, again, very critical for industry in particular to be able to show, and again, Patrick mentioned also this word, which is the behavioral interviews. That's why we also run within like our company, and I know most organizations do it. And the reason is when you are in school, in general, you probably have more freedom into the things that are happening. Yes, you might collaborate with others, but at least from what I have seen, you spend a lot of time, let's say, doing your work, your own research. But once you come to industry, the first thing you're going to see is that like cross-functional collaboration is very key. A single person is really not going to be able to deliver pretty much anything, just because of the complexity that every single project entails, and yeah, like validation, whatever, right? So you have to work with a lot of people. There are regulations you have to pass, for example, in the case of automotive. So if there is any way to highlight this kind of collaboration with other teams, on top of the impact that Patrick already touched, so maybe I'm not going to go there, but collaborating with others, how did you solve conflicts? This is very common in industry, right? And not because oh, I'm just not aligned with this person, is because organizations may have different priorities for 2026 or different metrics, right? And then you need something from this organization that is only 40% aligned with their yearly goal. So how do you solve these issues? How do you escalate? And again, all this you can develop as you are doing your PhD, like working with constraints, dealing with vendors, dealing with delays. How do you communicate to your advisor, or how do you prioritize what can we do for this research conference in 6 months versus what could we present in the one next year, right? So yeah, so I probably touched on some points there, but again, critical to show this like being able to work with other people and being able to solve conflicts and working through constraints. This is very critical for engineering jobs in industry.
Yeah, actually, this again relates to one of the questions that I had prepared for after. But now that you touched this point, I wanted to ask you both, like, aside from teamwork abilities and leadership, what other non-technical skills do you think are worth to highlight for applicants? Because the technical stuff, usually you can learn. Of course, not everyone will have the knowledge of a PhD in 1 month or 2 months. That's not possible. But I think that on top of that, there are some like non-technical skills that sometimes people underestimate. So if you could like highlight maybe three or four that you think are worth, of course, aside from teamwork and leadership.
Okay, sure. Maybe I'll start. So again, so let's say if you're asking for specific ones, I would say emotional intelligence is very important, right? So dealing with these situations, sometimes it's going to happen through an email, yeah, and that's easier to manage, right? Or through a Slack. But sometimes these kind of situations can arise in a live meeting or in an in-person like technical discussion, whatever that is. So having that ability to work through these situations, right, and being able to manage and drive forward, right. In the industry level, what you're gonna see is execution is pretty ruthless. Is probably the word I'm going to use. So things have to move forward, right. So there are sentences like disagree and commit. So okay, you're saying one thing, I'm saying another thing, but okay, what do we do? What can we agree on to make sure the organization or the company as a whole is moving forward? It's not like this conflict between these two groups is going to prevent the next Rivian vehicle from being produced, right? So you need to find a way like out, right? Prioritization is also very important because changes keep on coming at us very fast. For example, in our organization, we are supporting with multiple programs. One is, for example, okay, the next vehicle that Rivian and Volkswagen are producing. So that's in a very different development stage compared to supporting the current pickup truck that Rivian started producing in 2021, right? And as you are developing the new one, maybe you face a critical issue on the one you produced 3-4 years ago, so you have to reprioritize, right? So I already gave you two. You need 3 or 4, you said, right? Yeah, sure. The other one I would say I already touched on this was ability of driving end to end, because again, if you come as a higher level person, like more senior, let's say, into the organization, the expectation is going to be this person is capable of driving the project, making sure it succeeds. And this means a lot of things. Like for somebody who maybe hasn't done it, is not too clear what all these things are, but it's a lot of work to go from requirements to end-to-end solution. And also mentoring becomes very important. Maybe that's number 4, and then I'll be done, Patrick, and you can go next. Mentoring in the sense, if you're a senior person in the org, it is always said that a healthy organization has people at all levels, right? So the senior people should be able to mentor the ones that, for example, still do not have that experience, and they should be able to drive them and support them towards achieving the organizational goals. So being able to say, okay, who will work on what, how long will it take that person to complete these steps versus another one, or do I reprioritize the work for this other person that already work on this project, and maybe he or she can be more productive in this other one. So again, all of those are touched. I have seen from my experience as being critical at this stage. Yeah.
And maybe for you, Patrick, I will change the question to have another point of view. And now that Andres talked about what's required, then I want to ask you what's not, or what's a mistake that people usually do when applying to jobs. And also, I think you mentioned a few earlier, like underestimate your TA experience or so on. But what do you think is the number one mistake people do while underselling themselves or not taking into account these abilities that Andres just mentioned?
No, absolutely. And yeah, I'm sorry, Andres. I got a few minutes to write down some notes while you were talking about those 4 things. So, yeah, the number one mistake that I see people make in their interviews, all right, and it's something we touched on earlier, but it's about people describing what they did, but not why it mattered or what impact it had. So I'm going to give you an example, and this is very recent. I talk to PhDs every day. I was just doing a mock interview, helping someone prepare for their interviews. This was just a couple of days ago. And I asked this person, hey, what's one of your greatest achievements and why do you believe it was one of your greatest achievements? Her answer was my patents. And the reason being because they're hard. Now, a little context, this person was brilliant. She's still in her PhD. She had 8 patents, which she had, had converted as a PhD. Amazing work. But when I asked her about, what was her greatest achievement? Yes, she said her patents. And she said, oh, why? Because they were hard. I prodded her more. I said, like, well, which patent? She said, oh, the first one. It was regarding X, right? And again, it was because it was hard. I'm going to say, look at the amazing accomplishment that this person had. 8 patents. Her greatest achievement so far as a PhD was having, a certain patent, which she felt really strongly about. But I was having to try to pull the information out of her. She should have been talking about that patent, the work she did, the leadership she showed, everything she had to go through to get that patent, which related to her ability to work within industry. But even as someone doing a mock thing, I was left, okay. And since I prodded her and she never came and told me about the patent, of course, her feedback from me was, you need to talk about your accomplishments. You need to talk about what you did. You need to talk about the real world result. You're proud of this thing. Describe it, explain it, put it into language that industry can understand. So people come in and they're shy. Guess what some of the things I hear? Oh, I don't want to seem like I'm bragging, or I don't want. No, in your interviews, you need to own. Of course, there's a certain level. We don't want to go into the level of being irritating and, I'm all of this. However, you need to talk about your accomplishments. You need to own them. And so many people leave that on the table and don't describe the impact that they have. And one of the biggest problems, this is all related to a bigger problem of what we call self-advocacy, which we try to coach people on. People undersell, people undersell the impact. They focus on details instead of outcomes, and they wait to be asked instead of leading with the value that they can produce. So this is like one of the biggest mistakes I see people make in terms of talking to recruiters about their work and about their impact that they have.
Oh, thank you both. I think those, yeah, I'm impressed about everything that you're saying. I'm also going to take notes after. So, thank you both on that. I think we're running out of time, so I'm going to go through the next step. That's after the interview. Let's assume that it was successful and you got the job, taking into account, of course, all the advices you just said. So, um, particularly for you, Patrick, that you work like trying to define these benchmarks specifically for PhD. Some of them have never worked before. So how do you think people should, you know, try to look for their value in the market, and what research strategy would you recommend before and after applying to a job, and during this negotiation process, to determine their value and know if they are going to be paid fairly? Basically, yeah, what mistakes have you seen? And after the interview successful, I mean, the company, of course, wants you. So how you deal with this? You're on mute. Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yes. Yeah, there's a couple of different strategies that we propose people use. And number one, and let's talk about prior to the job. You're going to see the compensation range possibly on the job announcement or the job description. Um, so that's one thing to look at, of course. But I think I want to say something before I even go there, because the way tech salaries has gone, and I'm sure Andreas can back this up, it's insane. I do this every day for a living. And so you can see people with the same job level, the same role, but maybe they're on a different team within the same company, and their salaries can be completely different. So that's the first thing I want to tell you guys. So research is critically important. But in this research, you have to make sure you're comparing apples to apples, as they say, and oranges to oranges. Because what's your there's compensation, there's a salary band. What company is it? What role is it? What level is it? What country is it? Is it still in the United States? And what team is it on? All these things can help determine how much your pay is going to be, rather than this is for L4 research scientists at Meta. That's very vague. You cannot, say because this L4 research scientist at Meta is making X amount, that's what you're going to be entitled to. So I want to make sure I preface that first of all. So the first step that I would say people need to do is, of course, everyone here is researchers, research, research, research. And the best way is you want to use verified role-specific comp data sources, right? And it's not just because I work here, but I would like to say, Aurora, we have one of the best comp data resources. We actually have information on, we're dealing with anywhere from 20 to 50 PhDs per month going through processes, and we keep all the comp data of what real world offers are of what these people are getting. So you need to look at a place like Aurora where you can get information. And the great thing about my company, and I'm not advertising, but I will say that we are welcome. If someone after this wants to connect with me on LinkedIn and you getting ready to go through the job search process, you can ask me, hey, I'm looking at an L4 research scientist at Meta on the FAIR team. Can you give me any comp data? Gladly give it to you, whether you're working with us or not. So we have up-to-date real-time comp data. So if you don't use us, of course, you need to use another company that's got real and certified up-to-date information. So that's number one. Number two, and I don't mind listing some of those other companies: Level FYI, Team Blind, Comparably. You can find comp data on all those places. Do I think ours is the best? Yes, I do. So I will say that. Okay, number two, you could talk to someone who's negotiated offers before, whether that's a professional like me, or whether that's someone that has been someone that has gone into the company, into the team, and into the same location where you're at. If you have that, talk to them and find out how their offer went. Uh, you definitely can do that and advise that. You can talk to advisors who have industry experience, but again, the best information is someone who's fresh and recently gone through it. Reach out to alumni or mentors who've recently transitioned. And then you can join Slack communities, Slack communities or any other communities where comp data is discussed. But it's seriously, and I'm going to reiterate this, it's so important that you get aligned on the role, the title, the level, the company, the team. All these things determine your compensation. And I want to give you one example, which to this day, even though I do this every day, I find incredible. We recently had someone who had two offers. One was from Meta, and the person received $2 million a year, an offer from Meta. Guess what? The closest offer was his second offer was from Amazon for $500,000 a year. So you talk about the disparity. Things matter on what are your competing offers? Do you have competing offers that can elevate your comp to something beyond your wildest dreams if the company really wants you? So imagine this person getting $2 million from Meta, but his second closest offer was $500,000. Same person, same background, two different companies. One company's valuing him at 2 million, the other one's valuing him at 500,000. So these are the kind of things. That's why determining comp is not a black and white, and you need to do your research to know where you're at. So when you do receive an offer, you can say, hey, whether you use Rora or you knew someone else, you could say like, hey, I know someone else with the same role, the same team, that location, and they were offered $50,000 more base salary. They were offered $100,000 more equity, and they were offered $10,000 more on a signing bonus. And therefore, then you can use that comparable data to make your counter offer. So, as I said, it's not a black and white process, and that's why you need to do your homework and make sure you're comparing apples to apples.
Thank you so much for these insights. And regarding to this, and noting a question that I would like to ask Andres, being able to achieve these salaries and stuff requires you to demonstrate that you are worth that value. So I wanted to ask you, Andres, like especially for senior level opportunities or managers, how do you demonstrate that value, and how do you think managers and staff members as you support this value that you can bring to the table and that is worth the money or the offer that they are giving you?
Sure. Yeah. So going back to, I think, Patrick's earlier comment on impact, right? So most organizations, the impact that you can drive is the most critical thing, especially if you're talking about, for example, these monetary situations, right? Like what are those things that basically you can drive for the company? And here I'm going to make a comment, especially once you go through the interview process, is even similar teams within different companies can have very different goals, right? Like I have been working for camera teams for maybe 10 years now, a bit longer than 10 years. And if I look at the 3 companies I worked for, or I guess 4 if I count Rivian as a separate one, they all had very different goals. The jobs were not so different after all, but the way you would frame your experience, let's say to each one of those directors of engineering or VP of engineering, who are the ones, I guess, at the end, of course, the hiring manager as well, but they are the ones at the end making the final call into, okay, we do want to hire that person. And then the next question is, at what level does that person come in? Is it a level 5, level 6, whatever that means? And then within that level, as Patrick was saying, like where in the band, right? And the bands are very wide, right? Like, yeah, I mean, I guess I won't talk numbers here, but the bands can be very wide if you are like at the beginning of the band versus at the end, where in theory you are very close to getting a promotion. So on your resume, for example, or on the interviews, one thing that, of course, we have seen lately becoming very critical is showing numbers, right? As Patrick mentioned, it's not a matter of just saying, oh, I published a paper in NeurIPS about X, Y, and Z. It could be more like, you know what, with my model, I was able to drive 10% lower false rate on people detection in vehicle, like in our case, right? So that way you're talking more like business impact for the organization, as opposed to, again, a very high level, let's say, technical, like title, for example, your paper title, and it's not too clear. Let's say, for example, right now we have Hugging Face, so you can say, oh, my model, my Gen AI model, which I used this model as reference, I retrained it on whatever, and I was able to achieve these better metrics, right? So that's real impact. That is what basically what an organization needs, right? So for us internally, if let's say our AI group comes and say, hey, we're able to reduce the false rate by 15%, that is a very important metric that our manager will go and tell the VP right away, right? Whereas if we say, I don't know, oh, I have a new architecture that I developed, but let's say yet I haven't measured anything in vehicle, I haven't been able to even execute it in the vehicle because I don't have enough resources. Again, you're going a bit more into the research domain versus the like business oriented impact that like engineering teams basically need. So, yep.
Okay, thank you both for this. I think we definitely are running out of time. I think we can have one question from the audience. I'm sorry to cut you off, but just in the matter of respecting time. So I don't know if everyone from the attendees have any questions that you would like to ask Andres or Patrick. And in the meantime, I will share with you a QR code with Rora's guide to interview preparation, so you guys can have access to. And yeah, you can do the question here in the chat. If any. I can see the chat now, so I'm not able to see them, but yeah.
I think one question came.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back really quick here. Yeah, so the question is, when it comes to looking for new positions, what suggestion do you have for managing process? Searching for jobs at a specific company involves preparation for each position. One wishes to apply and seeks for referrals. How can be effectively manage the time while looking for job opportunities?
Okay, I mean, I'll start off with that if you want. Okay, I have the question up while I'm here because it's a couple of parts. So when it comes for looking for positions, what suggestions do you have on managing the process? You know what? There are so many, and I mentioned earlier about starting early. And I know that I deal with people every day, maybe like this person, all I see is initials AL. Like maybe you're defending your dissertation, maybe you're preparing a paper for a conference, and you've got to juggle this job search at the same time. Completely understand and empathize. It is hard, and it's hard to start that job process at that time. And I'm not going to tell you that it's easy, but some of the tricks that we like to say is planning ahead. You can work with someone to help you through the process, but even if you're doing it yourself, number one, I'd like to say on building connections. I recommend that people, even ahead of time before you start applying, you should be connecting with at least 20 people a week on LinkedIn who work in the jobs or the areas that you want to work in and the companies. Now, a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to spend 3 hours on LinkedIn. There's a simple process. I use it myself. Yeah, I'm sorry. I got to be aware of time. There's a simple process. I use it myself. Make yourself a simple 2 sentence blurb. Hi, my name is John. I'm a recent PhD grad, focusing on machine learning. Happy to connect. Go into the people that you want to see working at the companies, filter LinkedIn, cut and paste that same connection message into all of these people. Simple. We're not asking you to engage, but you can connect with at least 20 people a week. You're building up this, what we want to call your reservoir of people that you're going to come back later on. And that's when you're going to come back later on, whether it's 2 months later, 2 weeks later. Now you're going to recontact them and ask for a meeting where you're going to want to talk about what they're interested in and try to get a referral from them. So preparation is key. And that technique on building those connections, that saves so much time. Planning. You need to look at some of these companies and see what their typical interview process, how long it takes. As I mentioned earlier, startups typically you can go from application to job offer within 3 to 6 weeks. So you want to time your interviews because it's so important that you have your offers coming in all at the same time. Larger companies, especially Google is the worst. If you're gonna, I mean, as far as timing, a great place to work. But if you're gonna time your interview, they take forever. It could take 6 months to go through the Google process. That's one of the first places you want to apply, then other larger companies, and finally, after you're a month or two into the hiring process at the large companies, that's when you start with the startups. So timing is critically important. And then preparation. As I said, I know you're short on time, but it's going to take at least 200 hours. Well, we recommend at least 200 hours preparation for your technical interviews, your behavioral. You also need to prepare as well. What can you do? You have to make the time to do this preparation. This is your life and this is your future career. So if you need to time it, if you need to delay, you need to figure out what your runway is. How quickly do you need a job? Can you hold off starting to apply while you finish your dissertation or while you defend your thesis? Can you hold off while you're doing this conference paper? If not, you're going to have to juggle it and you're going to have to do the little tips and things that I'm recommending here ahead of time. Find your time when you can do them. But this is a whole process. And the things you do earlier on, they result in when you get to that offer stage, they all matter. So as hard as it is, you can do little things to reduce the time, but overall you have to make the time. But it's critically important that you don't skip steps and do the things that you can as far as cutting the time. But it's going to be difficult in the end. It's going to be difficult in the end, no matter what, when you're studying, working another job, finishing your PhD.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you both. I think we already run out of time. So I encourage, as Patrick said, you can make connections with Patrick and Andres probably. So thank you. I want to personally thank Patrick and Andres. Your insights were really valuable. Thank you for that, and I hope to see you soon in another upcoming event at Latinx in AI. And for those who are seeing us in YouTube later, please feel free to engage with our events and our community. Again, following the advices from Patrick and Andres.
Yeah. Awesome. I just want to tell everybody that happy to be here. And there's one tip of advice that I didn't get to give, and that is do not give your compensation data to recruiters in the initial calls. If there's one thing you learned from here, do not do that. That can save you tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, and years in your career. Do not give compensation to recruiters in your initial phone calls. So I'm sorry, I had to get that in.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.